Absolutely does. So Sean Cunningham joining us, reporter, Fox 40. We'll cover all sorts of things, maybe even more SNL for sure as well. Sean, we were
Yeah.
just doing an exercise that maybe you can help us with. We just had the Bay Bridge series part 1 yesterday with the A's and Giants, and we were trying to come up with the best Bay Area team, not all time, but since 2000. So how would you have broken the tie at first between like Giambi and Olsen? Would you have leaned to,
Oh,
unless there was a giant like JT Snow, but I wouldn't have. I leaned
well,
to Giambi.
JT Snow did save Darren Baker's life. I mean,
That's
let's not
true.
forget that. And I do give, gosh, yeah, Will Clark didn't make it to the 2000s
Right.
as a Giant, so that was too tough. But yeah, I mean, how do you break the tie? I think simply just maybe postseason success, maybe the steroid era. I don't know. Giambi had such a thing that hovered around him for so long, but it was his brother who didn't slide, right?
Yeah.
Wasn't it Jeremy that didn't slide against the Yankees, and so I guess you can't blame that on Jeremy. But
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it feels like I don't even know if this is true. I'm not an A's fan, and I don't really remember it that well. But it feels like Giambi was kind of in the mix for an MVP. Olsen just
Yeah.
seems like he had a little bit more of a longer tenure with
That
Oakland. Am I remember
that's
that
it.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's kind of like you're going maybe more impact, more um season success with Giambi, but it was shorter term because he was there, I think, to like 2002. Where Olsen was a little bit longer, but maybe not the same kind of stuff. So we had that one. We had where would you fall in line between? We thought this one was tough. Tejada, Simeon, or Crawford
Oh
at
wow.
short, and they're all a
I'd
little
go
bit different.
Crawford. The longevity. I'm maybe it's because I'm a Giants fan, but I mean just the longevity, and of course, being one of the best defensive shortstops to ever do it. And I think if you ask the females in the audience, I mean the ladies loved him. So yeah, I'm gonna give the tip of the cap there to Crawford, especially he did win 3 championships.
Yeah, we had it. This one might be easier for you. Also, you've said it. You're a fan of the Giants, but pitching candidates like one starter. I mean, we had Kane, Lincecum, Mad Bum, Hudson, Zito, but I kind of lean towards Mad Bum.
Oh yeah, I mean Timmy is probably. Matt Cain and Timmy. Timmy. You had no hitters. You had a perfect game. I mean, those things were great. Yeah, I think Mad Bum probably is the one that maybe gets it over the get. Yeah, I mean, probably, especially what he did at the plate, man. I mean,
Yeah, throw that
it
in.
was just he was the youngest of them all. I mean, he got to experience all of it. That he came out and he was able to clinch a save against in the Royals series. I mean, I'd probably have to give it to Mad Bum too. I mean, if you're getting a whole rotation, I guess you got to get Zito. He's on both sides of the Bay.
Yeah,
Meant so much for the A's, and then people forget like he was a frustrating player for the Giants, but that he's got a series where he mattered, and against that series and against the Reds was so incredible. They had their backs against the wall, and he came out and pitched a gem. So I liked his time with the Giants. I always felt like he was a unnecessary target at times, but he was crucial for him.
Well, speaking of those Giants, yesterday, I've been saying this, Sean, on the show yesterday and really today, they found a way somehow to straddle the fence on being buyers and sellers. I think they should have been sellers. I know they're quote unquote in the race. I know they've got a favorable schedule coming up, but I don't see it. I don't see the best case scenario for me, Sean, with this team is somehow they get in and that pitching gets hot. And I could see that happening with Webb and Ray and Snell if they kept all those pieces, and they did. But I don't love their lineup. Their hitting has been wildly inconsistent, and I just thought this was an opportunity to reboot a little bit, maybe even become aggressive sellers, but also still stay in the race because everybody's in the race. So I don't know what's your make of kind of Farhan and where the Giants are today and where they're going.
Yeah, it's completely frustrating. I was looking back at it. Their biggest offseason acquisition. I mean, if you, I guess, obviously Blake Snell is there, but from an offensive standpoint, it was Jorge Soler.
Yeah.
And I was pretty over the moon for that signing. I think maybe it's just because you talk yourself into it for all the sluggers that have told you no over the recent years, and Otani and Aaron Judge, the two kind of poster children for it. But I mean, when you really looked at it, you knew they weren't going to be at full strength until right around now. This July going into August, because Robbie Ray was so far away. Alex Cobb has just been, plagued with injury, and you add Blake Snell to that, who has also been hurt, but they didn't expect him to struggle the way it was. So now here you are, you get, you have the Dodgers series that doesn't go well, and you position yourself after the series at the Rockies, and you're 3.5 outside the wild card. Should you've been sellers? Maybe, but I kind of wanted them to go for it. I know it's always interesting for fans to want to see them position themselves to do well because of their postseason success and what the wild card has truly meant to a time when they were a dynasty. But I'm with you. I mean, I don't have any faith that this Giants team can get it done. I think Farhan Zaidi, the general manager of the Giants, when he was speaking yesterday, I don't disagree with him. I mean, they've had a lot of homegrown success. They've had some nice moments, if you will. Tyler Fitzgerald and Elliot Ramos, who's become an all-star. And I remember even a year ago, people going, this guy's not going to totally develop into what they've expected from him. I mean, he's kind of a guy who's a little longer in the tooth from a AAA standpoint. He's been here for 3 years in Sacramento, and he hasn't been able to kind of punch through. And Marco Luciano has kind of been up and down and hasn't really been given the opportunity, mainly because defensively he just doesn't look right. So by moving Soler, give him some more at bats. They think they can do it organically, and obviously they've got a pretty nice starting pitching rotation. Hayden Birdsong has become one of those guys that they want to see more of, and you have just an absolute gem of a performance from Robbie Ray, followed by an absolute terrible performance last night. I mean, I think they can maybe get close. I mean, I do believe, I do understand the notion that, hey, if you go out and win 7 of 10, if all of a sudden you have a series here or there, you can really gain some ground. And, this A's team is terrible. Go out and win this series and you can position yourself well. I understand all that, but to have the faith that they can actually pull through, this team just doesn't sustain winning very well. You might get a series sweep here and there, and you might start to believe again, but it's short-term success. They haven't really shown an ability to go out and win 10 straight. So if that happens, we might be singing a different tune here in the next couple weeks, but I don't have the faith that they can do it.
What is your opinion of Farhan? Do you think this is a job that he will keep here after the season?
That to me, that's hard to picture. I mean, I think the voices in the national media are going to get a little bit louder. But there is some success there. I mean, he hasn't been a total failure. I think some of the, homegrown talent, the way they've drafted, I think some guys coming into their own has certainly doesn't get the shine that it should. But what's going to plague this team the most is, managerial change and of not being able to land that superstar. I mean, just striking out everywhere, and the lack of wins, no postseason. That's going to haunt him more than anything, and that's going to be the thing that overshadows, in my mind, his tenure with San Francisco. So yeah, I mean, I don't think it. To me, does he have to get into the postseason to keep his job? I don't think that should be a true barometer for him. But if to me, I think there should have already been if it's up to me, I'm looking for somebody else. But if it truly comes down to that might be a little bit disappointing if I'm a Giants fan. Like, it shouldn't take the playoffs for him to save his job. I mean, you can get in the wild card and lose, and what did you really accomplish? So to me, their mind should already been made up. But that's a question for ownership and Larry Baer and guys like that. And I think it was interesting to see the involvement of Bob Melvin over the past 2 days. He comes into yesterday they came in on Monday thinking that the deadline was on Monday, and positioning, trying to, rattle the cage to try and bring in someone like Mark Canha, and for him to call Mark Canha the perfect player to add to this roster at this right time seems absolutely mind-boggling to me, because Mark Canha is just not a good baseball player. I mean, you'd rather have Jorge Soler. I mean, I know there's no analytic for chemistry. If you put him in there and all of a sudden that goes well, sing a different tune, but I just can't picture that being the perfect ingredient to put this team over the top into the postseason.
Talking with Sean Cunningham, sports reporter here locally, Fox 40. So we talked Giants. I want to bounce a couple other things around. I know you've been at 49ers camp. Niners will be opening up here soon with preseason, and then, of course, the regular season. Expectations galore. Did you find when you were at camp, Sean, was there more talk about Aiyuk and Trent Williams who weren't there, or the actual guys that were there?
No, it's definitely the ones that aren't there or who are not participating. I mean, that first day, of course, everyone comes out. You're expecting to see maybe Brandon Aiyuk on the sidelines. I know it was funny for me, and I've come in with my camera, and that's all I'm looking for. But then right when you walk out on the field, you go, wait, the easiest guy to spot out here is 71 Trent Williams, and he's not here. And all of a sudden, that now takes priority. And me just still honing in on Brandon Aiyuk. I don't think anybody even noticed him until he walked in front of the media. I kind of saw him off to the side and got a nice shot of him walking with John Lynch. And, Brandon Aiyuk was absolutely the priority. Everything to hone in on him and get him into camp. He's doing a hold in, still reporting, still going through team meetings. But at the time, you don't know what totally to expect that day one. Here we are a week later, and he totally takes a back seat to what this Niners team will do with Trent Williams, because to me, he's the best player in football, even at his age. Just crucial to the team's success and to what makes that offense tick, and giving Brock Purdy the time that he needs to, and Christian McCaffrey the time that they need to be so impactful. And when all of a sudden he now is holding out for a new contract, if you're Brandon Aiyuk, that makes you feel a lot less confident about being able to get something done. I will say, I think seeing DJ Williams sign with Chicago last night, if you're Brandon Aiyuk, just kind of gives you another little bullet in the chamber there to kind of go at 49ers management a little bit with, because that averages out to about 27 and a half a year. But I think he's got aspirations north of 30 million per season, and I don't know if that can get done.
At this point, I'm not too worried about either one. I mean, Williams has to be there. That one's like a
Right.
look, no offense to Ayuk, but like they can't go on without Trent Williams. So I think they'll get there with Ayuk. I know there was that trade demand, but in the end, don't you think come week one, those guys are starting and lining up for the 49ers?
I wonder about that. I mean, I know the Niners still have the ability to franchise tag, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know that that'll make for a pleasant situation within the receiver room. But yeah, I mean, I think cooler heads might prevail here. I think Brandon Aiyuk knows that, and even Trent Williams for that matter, this Niners team goes down every single year with a holdout, with a hold in, with someone who's not happy with their contract. And it's not, because it's just kind of the nature of the business. They've got such top tier talent at every position that these good teams are going to have those problems. We're only into the second week of camp, so I don't think anyone's too terribly concerned. And you look at Nick Bosa last year going into the season, and that's one position where you looked at those first few games after he ended his holdout and came to an agreement on a very lucrative deal, where he wasn't quite himself that we saw the same Nick Bosa later on in the season. I don't think there's any concern for somebody like Brandon Aiyuk to be able to end his hold in, come to an agreement, and then be able to just pick up things like that.
Right.
But I do wonder. I mean, as we saw with Deebo Samuel, he's so crucial to not only the team's success, but having the chemistry with Brock Purdy, and what he meant to this team last year was just incredible. Going through injuries, and makes you forget about even him holding out at a time. So I think something that can get done rather quickly. But you got to hope this Trent Williams thing gets done first, because all of his guaranteed money from his deal. That one also seems like it. I have more faith in something for Trent Williams getting done. I just wonder what implications it has on Brandon Ayuk's future and what he's looking to get from a dollar standpoint, because I think with having to commit so much money to Trent Williams, at least for this season alone, possibly for next season, really tends to possibly hurt Brandon Aiyuk and what he's hoping to get if it is truly north of 30 million. I don't know that. I think that could be kind of a bridge too far for him.
This team has expectations of winning that final game, something they haven't been able to do, just losing the Super Bowl a couple times in the last few years. Goals are all there. Ability to do it, I think, is there. What's holding them back in your mind, if anything, from doing that this year?
That's a good question. I don't think there's. I think they've kept continuity for the most part. I don't know that some of the things that they've said goodbye to on the defensive side of the ball. I think they have every weapon possible that they need on the offensive end, and they're lucky to have that, and they'll be in the mix in the conversation. Winning the big game, I think, is they were so close last year. It's really incredible that they lost that game the way they did in overtime to the Chiefs. It's heartbreaking for them. I don't think that there's really anything they could have done differently. I mean, you run into a buzzsaw like Kansas City, who seemingly has your number, but that one truly is a heartbreaker. It's hard to get back into to go back to a Super Bowl in consecutive years, but this team has shown a knack for being able to get into the NFC Championship and be able to compete and contend. So I think it's a seasoned team. I think it's a team that's had their heart broken. They know what it's like to play in these games. I think they're just positioned very, very well. It all kind of I hate to put all the pressure onto the quarterback because it isn't, but I think there's still there's so many question marks that come from fans and media and even people you talk to around the league when it comes to Brock Purdy. And it's weird because he certainly has the track record and the numbers and everything on his side, but he's going to be going into that number. We're going to be talking about Brock Purdy the way we're talking about Brandon Aiyuk, I think, next season, and everyone's expecting there to be some ugliness when it comes to the contract. So because of that, because that's looming, I think so much will fall onto the shoulders of Brock Purdy.
All right, we talked Giants, we've talked Niners, want to talk Kings. We have the longest wait for them to get going. You and I were out at Summer League watching them in Vegas.
Boy, that was fun.
It was fun, and I think to me the biggest disappointment of it. I mean, you're watching to see who else can contribute. What are guys that can be a part of the Kings' future? I mean, Devin Carter had the injury. I would have really liked to see him play, but if we're looking at big picture, Sean, of what the Kings are now compared to what they were at the end of last season, how do you feel about them today? Still about 2 months away from the start of the NBA season.
Oh yeah, I mean, you feel great about them, and with the talent upgrade, especially, we're talking mainly about DeMar DeRozan and what he brings to this Kings team, and now you have a true three-headed monster, maybe even four if you can, count in a Keegan Murray that you might have a really high expectations for, someone entering just another year that you want to see him blossom into this player that everyone thinks that he can be, potentially, being an all-star level conversation in a couple years, but really to see him bust out of his shell, but having the likes of DeMar DeRozan to take the pressure off of somebody like Domantas Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox and really be a true scorer, someone you can give the ball to who can get to the free throw line and actually make free throws is sorely needed for this team. And they did it without really sacrificing much talent with respect to, Harrison Barnes and Chris Duarte. They're able to land a talent like DeRozan without really having to shake up too much. And I think that's a huge accomplishment for this team. Yeah, it's not Brandon Ingram, it's not Lauri Markkanen, but for a 2-year type of deal, possibly 3, you've really positioned yourself well to give this team the ammo that they need. Certainly you have some questions on the defense and maybe questions about the fit for this team, but I think you got to be over the moon to see the way the West has changed and how competitive it can be, and just the talent in the West alone, to see some of the other teams who've kind of fallen into a little bit of a question mark all of a sudden. You don't know maybe what Memphis looks like next year. The Clippers could be a little bit of a head scratch. The Lakers, did they really add enough? And then here you are with the Kings, who at least have gotten better on paper, certainly have added another weapon in their arsenal, and it's a big weapon in DeMar DeRozan. Even though certainly Father Time is undefeated, and he's going to be 35 when he steps onto the court, I don't think that they're expecting DeMar DeRozan to be anything but DeMar DeRozan that we've all come to know, which is somebody you can give the ball to and go get you a bucket and be a very reliable fourth quarter impact scorer like De'Aaron Fox has shown to be. So you add that and come away from Summer League, I mean, I think you're feeling pretty good. Yeah, Devin Carter, that first round pick, is not going to be available until January, but that's somebody that they're trying to build the future for. He might play a bigger role maybe in the latter part of next season, but I think he's somebody you just kind of put a little stamp on, say, do not open until 2025, 2026 season.
How do you think that, now if we look forward and if he does show up again in Carter after January, let's say we're talking now again in February or March, and what the Kings are hoping to be a push towards the postseason, how do you think they'll split up those minutes in the backcourt, assuming the roster stays the same? And that's Fox, and that's Herter and Monk and DeRozan to some extent at that position, Devin Carter, maybe Keon Ellis, Jordan McLaughlin. I mean, look, it's a good problem to have, but kind of who's in and who's out there. How do you think some of those minutes will go in those backcourt spots?
Yeah, I'm curious to see it myself. I mean, who starts? I know there's a lot of hype around Malik Monk and figuring that, oh, he's back. They're committing a lot of dollars to him. He starts, right? And you talk to Mike Brown, and he's definitely talking to you about how the first thing, and you and I know this, Jason, because we've talked to him so many times. But it's like, no, Malik does what's best for the team, and I would argue that if Kevin Huerter is still on your team, that he's probably your starter. And I say that only because of roster balance and putting Kevin Huerter in the best mental, confident standpoint. Because this team, if Kevin Huerter's not on your team, all of a sudden you have kind of a lack of perimeter shooting. And if he can somehow bounce back from just an awful season that he experienced last year, maybe DeMar DeRozan makes his role a little bit more defined. I can certainly see it working better, but make no mistake, I think Malik Monk comes off the bench depending upon, if this team remains intact, and as long as Kevin Huerter's on the team. I still anticipate him coming off the bench, but I don't necessarily. I think some people thought that Keon Ellis and him taking over for Kevin Huerter getting hurt, and seeing him inserted in the starting lineup automatically makes him a starter for next year. I don't see that as well. I think he also comes off the bench. So I think the one that is a little bit of a head scratcher there is Jordan McLaughlin, because there is no Devin Carter for those first few months of the season. And, I think he ends up taking some of those Davion Mitchell minutes that we kind of saw later last year. And if he can, he's a guy that they've got some faith in based on what he was able to do with Minnesota. He doesn't turn the ball over. He just didn't really have much of an impact in terms of, obviously not the biggest guy in the world. He's only 6 foot, but they have a confidence to him, and he does too. And he's shown an ability to improve his 3-point shooting. So being a two-way scrappy player that this team wants to have a ton of guys just like him, just maybe with a little bit more size, is exactly what they're trying to build this roster for. So to me, I think McLaughlin has a fit on this team. I just don't know if Mike Brown goes that deep every single game. I think it's going to be a little bit of matchups, and maybe it's an 8, 9, 10-man rotation at most. But it'll be fun. I think those first few months of the season, really, and I'm talking about those first 25 games or so, could be some tinkering, and Mike Brown likes to tinker.
Yeah, he does. And you brought up that's the one area as the season begins, I feel like they're a little bit small. That's not new to this team. They play small in general. One, I guess, do you think they address that over time? Or two, do you think that'll end up hurting them if they kind of go with this roster and maybe I would say an overall lack of size?
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, to me, I was pessimistic about being able to add the necessary size, because it's not just going out there and finding a 7-footer or a guy who's 6'10". It's going out in there and find a guy who can contribute on both ends of the court, and especially on the offensive end, to not be able to totally disrupt the flow of the offense just to add somebody who might be a rim protector or a physical athletic body that might draw the attention of the officials with a lot of fouls. You want to have this fluidity to your offense that doesn't have, okay, you have a guy who comes in that might be really, really good on one end of the floor and primarily defense, but doesn't disrupt with the chemistry that goes on the offensive end, and still be able to stretch the floor. I mean, these guys don't grow on trees. So yeah, that's why the likes of, so many of these shows will talk, you got, you have fans that come in and say, oh, what about Aaron Gordon? What do you about? It's like, those are like the perfect fit for somebody like Sacramento. But again, how do you find that? And then how do you go about attracting that player, because that player is so obviously valued for what they do on their team currently. So it'll be interesting. I think it's going to be something that really they're going to miss, and they're going to have to find ways to win. And they're going to have to hope that a lot goes right here in the early going. But fortunately, you've got guys that can close out and win games, and guys like Fox and DeRozan just still adding that while you're trying to, this thing's never a finished product. If you're going out there trying to use the trade deadline as your next kind of deadline for yourself to be able to add to this roster, those first 25 games will certainly give you a nice sample size of what your team's able to do.
Well, Sean Cunningham joining us, covering all things from the Niners to the Kings to the Giants. We started with SNL.
Yeah, we did.
I said, Sean, it's for me, it's a joy to sit between you and Chris, at a funny movie. You guys are the one seeds and brackets of best laughs. What if between the three of us, we all watch Saturday Night Live every time? Why wouldn't we just take a road trip and go to watch SNL, the three of us, in person?
Oh, do not tease me with a good time, sir.
Because then we have to go to New York. Oh,
come on.
No, I'm down. Let's make this happen. I'm sure.
How great would that be?
Between the three of us, I think we have enough pull to where we should be able to secure the necessary means to be able to get to New York and have not just standby passes, but guarantee stamp into the Rockefeller and be able to go and check out SNL. I'm down. That's kind of like a bucket list thing for me. I definitely want
Me
to do
too.
it.
Here's the question though, guys. So like, you know how some skits in SNL, and I think this is the case, maybe there are other people that we don't know of behind the scenes that are involved, but sometimes they'll have like, if it's like a question from the audience and they're obviously using cast members or celebrities, but then there's other people in the background. Is there any chance that we could be in those cameos but hold the straight face?
No chance.
No.
I could. I don't know that you guys. I don't know. I think Sean would crack first.
I would keep a straight face and look directly at the camera.
What if Will Forte though was a cameo and he was saying something funny?
Oh well, then I wouldn't be able to help myself.
Exactly.
That would be the thing. Like you go there, like you have to hope that you have an incredible, musical guest and host. Can you imagine you get there and I don't know, for me, it would be all that. I mean, they could put literally anybody up there and I'd be thrilled. But Chris right out of the gate would be like, no, not funny. I don't like this guy.
We got a terrible guest host.
It would be great is if after the show, we're told to go meet Lorne Michaels and he says, you two gentlemen's laugh has been so good for the show. We need you to be here every episode.
Good. That's a good impression.
Is that your Lorne Michaels?
I liked it.
Good.
I thought
Yeah,
it was pretty good.
See, maybe when the Kings are, hopefully they're like in New York, like on a Friday or a Sunday, we can go out there, cover the game, and then go to SNL on Saturday.
You guys are both invited to my MacGruber showing.
Oh, that's
in
right.
September.
In September. Sean, you in?
So this is real?
Yes.
I got the invite and I thought he was just being funny.
No, it's a real thing.
That's a real thing.
Yeah. Got the deposit in and everything.
Would that set you back? It's your party. How did you have to pay for it?
Because who else is going to pay for it?
Your friends that are going and family members.
Oh, we'll see.
Okay.
I'll put a donation bucket at the door.
Yeah, exactly. Tips.
I'll see what I can do. That sounds too good to pass up.
That's right. Well, Sean, thank you. We appreciate you checking in with us. Keep up your great work, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, guys. See you later.
All right. Thank you. That's Sean Cunningham from Fox 40. Used to be here at then Sports 1140. Long time local legend, honestly. I mean, Sean's connections are just top notch. We always appreciate getting his insight on everything we cover there, from the Niners to the Kings to the Giants. We'd love your reaction, your thoughts to that when we come back. Still to come in this hour. Who's hot, who's not? We'll go streaking. But up next, what to expect today.